Good evening. I'm calling this meeting to order. Would you please stand with me and recite the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for coming out tonight. The first item on our agenda is going to be a quarterly report from our local Chamber of Commerce, and it'll be Heidi McCutcheon giving us that tonight.
Smile.
Huh? Yep, I think I got one. Thought I have one.
Fancy.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heidi.
In accordance with our agreement with the City of Shelton and the Shelton County Chamber of Commerce, I'm happy to present this first quarter report to you on tourism visitor information services within the City of Shelton. Just to quickly go over the report, I won't read it all to you since I know you guys can do that yourselves. Our Facebook page is one of the ways that we help get information out across our community. We now have more than 2,100 fans on that page. During the first quarter, our page attracted almost 140,000 unique users and had a weekly average of engaging about 3,000 users, which means that by engaging, they're either liking, commenting, sharing, passing it along to their friends. You can see our top two posts from the first quarter. The first was hikes, waterfall hikes specifically, around and near Hood Canal. And then the second most popular was our report back about the awards gala and who took home the awards this year. So right underneath that, you can see Shelton continues to be the most popular user that interacts with our Facebook page, followed by Olympia, Union, Belfair, Seattle, and Grapeview in that order. I've just provided the top 6 there for you so you can see those numbers. Looking at our visitor counts, currently we have more than 20 volunteers that spend their time both in the Chamber office, in the caboose, and at our Sport Visitor Center. You can see those numbers there. In January, we were up slightly. In February, we were down slightly. In March, we were up slightly again. One of the new things that's happening in our Pittsburgh office is since 2006, when we reopened that, it was a United States Forest Service office. We have had contracts with both the National Park Service as well as the United States Forest Service. This summer, they're going to be bringing a wilderness officer into the visitor center and handing out wilderness permits. So that's pretty exciting. We expect to see an increase of about 30% from that. They think that in the 4 days, they'll be there Thursday through Sunday, passing out the permits, and they expect up to 200 people a day. On our busy days there, we already are serving 300 plus. So that'll be quite a lot of people through that small place. So we're excited about that. If you look at the website and calendar, the website continues to be the online event calendar is the most popular page. There's a lot of phone calls and emails that we get asking people, do you know of anything that's happening on this weekend, or we're thinking about hosting this, what's a good weekend to do it? Just because we have a number of community events there. Lastly, we designed, wrote, edited, and distributed another issue of the Bite magazine, which goes out to more than 18,000 people in the community. In the most recent issue, there was several different stories on events and happenings, and then several spotlights on city businesses. So that's what I have for you on my first quarter report. Is there any questions that I can answer for you?
No, but
Any
it looks,
questions?
No, I have.
did a good job as usual.
Very good. Nice you've gone to one thick hard copy kind of instead of the thinner ones,
Yeah.
So,
Makes it nice.
yeah, it was good.
Yeah, my
Appreciate
pleasure.
it. Thank you very much for the work you're doing in the community.
Thank you.
Thanks, Heidi.
All right, next is our weekly commission reports, and first is Commissioner Dorsey.
All right, well, I have a fairly soft week coming up. I have my weekly meeting with Vicki and/or Bob Jean on Thursdays. Housing Coalition meeting on May 8th, 1:30. There's a groundbreaking coming up for the Connector Street project. I think it's the 14th. Is Andy here? Is that right? Okay.
That's correct.
At about 9 o'clock, I believe. And then on May 15th, which is our first council meeting, that day I'm going to go over and tour the, I think it's pronounced Keogh Village in Tumwater. That is the small homes project. And I'm going to go over with the Housing Coalition and look at that. And that's what I have so far, unless there are some special meetings coming up that I don't know about yet.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McDowell?
This morning I had my left board meeting, and Thursday I'll have my briefing with Vicki or Bob or both, not sure. Friday I have my Republican Women's monthly luncheon. Next week I'm going to leave town at Tuesday morning. We'll be gone till Thursday night. I'm going to the left board conference at Lake Chelan, so I'll be gone for that. And the groundbreaking on the 14th, and I just want to say how I felt real comfortable today when I went up to pick kids up from school and I saw a police officer walking the grounds. So that was very encouraging to see that. And that is my week and a half or 2 weeks or whatever it is.
Thank you very much. I just have my staff briefings. I have my major ones every Thursday with our interim city manager, Vicki Look, and then I do talk to citizens, and then I do attend the groundbreakings, et cetera, et cetera. So the first 2 weeks are generally the lighter of the 2 weeks, and then the last 2 weeks have a little more activity for us. And of course, when we get the new council installed, they will be sharing the load of probably these meetings, and we will be talking about that. So that concludes our commission report. And next is general public comment, and we allow a 3-minute time period for someone to come and talk what's on their mind. And is anybody signed up?
Yes, we do have someone signed up.
Okay.
Randy Lewis.
Oh,
Mr. Mayor, do we need to read this statement beforehand?
maybe not. We'll see. I'll tell you as soon as I hear what he talks about.
Don't worry. Let me know if I violate something. That'd be fun to talk for someone from the public to talk to about an actual issue for a change. I'd like to discuss the summary statement on the 2018 budget written by the former city manager, actually former city administrator, a budget prepared by the former city finance director. The write-up states that as of the beginning of 2018, the total city debt was $43.6 million. This is not a correct statement. The $43.6 million was not total city debt. It was the city bond debt only. The additional debts the city owes and is not included in their total is primarily to fund future employee benefits. Shelton's former finance director conceded that these obligations are in fact debts. On February 15th of this year, State Treasurer Dwayne Davidson posted, "Washington State's most expensive debt is our unfunded pension liability. The Government Accounting Standards Board, the accounting rule makers for government entities, requires, now that the retiring baby boomer chickens are coming home to roost, that these types of debts must now be placed on the balance sheet and not hidden in the footnotes. These are debts legally owned and precisely defined. These debts do not reflect mere promises. These are benefits earned by employees by virtue of their service." Here's a question for staff. Years from now, when your retirement benefits are due, will you consider these benefits to be only potential benefits, or do you consider these benefits you have earned are concrete? The former city administrator and former city finance director said things like, "These are only potential benefits. This is virtual debt only. This debt only matters if the city were to shut down. We are not concerned." These statements, of course, are nonsense and betray a gross misunderstanding of this type of debt. I get it, this type of liability is a difficult concept to grasp, but it is a real debt nevertheless. I'd be happy to discuss this with staff or anyone else confused on this topic in public if you would like. I'm glad to see candidate Vogler, had she been elected, plan to take advantage of skill sets in the community by establishing citizen advisory boards. Skill sets and knowledge exist in the community previously ignored that could be helpful to the new council. It is time for the city to join other modern entities in recognizing these types of debts as the actual, real, concrete debts they are, and discontinue perpetuating the outmoded and discredited political and bureaucratic false narrative by diminishing the reality of these debts. If the city does not do this, the city will be vulnerable to the implication that it is trying to make the city look better, like it is in better financial condition than it really is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is that it?
Oh, there's one more.
Oh,
No.
no.
Do I give this card to somebody?
Yeah, to give it to the lady over here.
I'm not quite used to protocol, sorry.
I know you were going to speak, so I was, Cheryl.
Cheryl Williams.
My name is Cheryl Williams. I live at 309 West G Street, and I am Vice President of the Board of Directors of Sound Learning. And I'm here tonight to announce our celebration. It is on May 11th this year, which is next Friday, starting at 6 o'clock, and it's a great community event. It's an adult spelling bee, and we have teams, I think we have 19 this year, which they dress up and they do stuff, and we just have a great time. We have a silent auction, we have snacks and everything, and so I hope you guys can make it. Thank you.
Could I ask a question before you said, we usually don't interact, but this is kind of like a public service now. For years, we've kind of donated something to your auction, and so if you come by, we'd be happy to do it.
Okay, great.
Okay, so I could have told you that off the side, but anyway, we're always happy to support your group.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
It's a fun thing. I think I've done the silent auction 2 or 3 times on stuff for my garden. And so, it's a fun night.
Yeah, it is fun.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. All right, thank you for your comments. Next, we are going to be recessing out of our regular commission meeting, and we're going to be opening up a public hearing concerning a resolution about an enterprise fund surplus equipment. So it looks like Craig Gregory is going to talk to us about that.
So, Mayor and Commissioners, as we spoke about last week, we are looking to surplus some enterprise fund equipment that is no longer of use to the department or the city of Shelton at this point.
Is that it?
That is it.
Oh, wow. So this is an action item, so we do request if there's any public testimony concerning this. Has anybody signed up for that?
No, we don't have anyone signed up.
Okay, so at this point, we're going to close the public hearing and return to our regular session. And I guess I'd invite the commissioners to, we routinely do this. Is there any questions or comments concerning this?
No, I don't have any
Okay.
questions. I looked at the list and the list of them, I can't put my hand on it right now, but anyway.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
it looks, all the proceeds go back to the department, utility department?
That is correct.
Okay, yeah.
There will be a public announcement of this.
Yes, we will certainly advertise, and then there will be a sealed bid that will follow that advertisement.
Okay.
So are we ready for them to have a reading of the resolution?
Yes, I
I
am.
think so. Could we please have a reading of that resolution?
Resolution number 1123-0418, a resolution of the City of Shelton declaring enterprise fund owned city property surplus to the needs of the city and disposing of such property for the common benefit.
Okay, and it says here approval. Do we need a motion at this time? Okay, so I would entertain a motion.
I move to adopt resolution number 1123-0418, declaring enterprise fund property surplus, and authorize the legal and proper disposal of such property.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Next on the agenda is a consent agenda. And are we prepared and ready for this consent agenda to be read? We are. Could we please have a reading of that agenda?
Vouchers numbered 17295 through 17379 in the amount of $225,594.05. Minutes from the business meeting of April 17th, 2018.
Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
And I will second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda passes. Now we're entering into the business agenda part of our session here tonight, and the first item is going to be an item about a bus pullout, and I did have on here that our associate engineer, Logan Brady, was going to present this. Not seeing him in the room, I'm sure he has sent, what do you call, someone to sit in for him.
Mayor, that will be me.
That'll be you? Okay, all right.
Unfortunately, Logan Brady is sick and has been for the last couple of days, so he apologizes for missing the meeting tonight.
All right, you have the floor.
Early in the Downtown Connector project design phase, we did identify quite a few partners with that project that also would benefit from this large project. One of them being Mason Transit Authority and the need for a bus pull-off or pull-out on the Alder Street Olympic Highway North roadway, which is now project named Downtown Connector. MTA, after meeting with them and having discussions and actually designing that bus pull-off, agreed to provide the actual bus shelter that was bid in the bid tab for the Downtown Connector project at around $13,000. So that will be a savings for the city of Shelton, and also pay for the construction of that bus pull-off, including the roadway striping, sidewalks for that area, totaling $96,398, which will be paid or reimbursed to the city of Shelton for that work being done.
Yay.
All right, any questions or comments? Yeah.
Wow.
That was one of those partners we talked about earlier when we had about 3/4 of the project funded, and good, that's good
That is
news.
awesome.
I think if you need a bus pull-out, then we need to put it in.
Yes.
So it
and I
appears we concur with this. So that means we can go ahead and place this on the action agenda for May 15th. Thank you, Craig. All right, next, seeing as how Logan is ill tonight, we will have Craig talk to us about some light poles.
Again, another partnership for the Downtown Connector project. PUD 3 was also identified as a partner that could help out and benefit from this project. So we bring before you tonight the interlocal agreement with PUD 3 to install the illumination poles up and down that project. There are 33 of them. So new lighting on the, what would be the south side of that roadway, and it is the entire distance of that project. So not only street illumination, but also pedestrian illumination on the back side of the pole. And PUD will be providing not only the installation, but also the mast arms for the luminaires and the luminaires themselves.
Wow.
Do you know if those poles will be wood poles or metal poles?
They will be decorative concrete poles, as we have similar to the Railroad Avenue corridor. We wanted to match that and get away from the old wood style poles and make it something that's more aesthetically pleasing. So we have gone out to bid for that, and we will touch on that a little later.
All right, any other questions or comments about this?
So they'll come up, you know what they look like?
They will look very similar to the poles on Railroad Avenue.
Okay,
And then at the, I believe it's 18-foot level, you will also have off the backside a pedestrian luminaire off the backside of the pole. There are also a few other additives that we added onto those poles that I was going to touch on later, but we can certainly address it now. A position for the hanging baskets, the flower baskets,
okay.
and also the flags that you see in other towns that we could put on that pole, we also added into that pole design also.
Very good.
Any other questions or comments?
No, that's fine.
Appears we occur to place this item on the action agenda for May 15th, 2018. And seeing as how,
Actually, I did have one more.
sure, no?
Craig, I remember back, I think it was before I joined this commission, but there was a meeting about how much power I believe that Justin Holsgrove was here, how much power this saves the city. Do you remember that at all?
I don't remember
it's a
the
big
actual
number.
number, but he stated it in houses that could be utilizing that power, going from high-pressure sodiums to LEDs. I don't remember the actual number,
I know
but
it was a
it
big
was a
It was
large
in
number.
the 300,000s.
Was that for the whole city though? That wasn't?
Yes, correct.
Right, yeah, that was a good
All
chunk.
right.
All right, so now it appears we still concur to place this on the action agenda for May 15th, 2018. Item number 3 is talking about a TIB grant increase, and this will be again presented to us by Mr. Craig Gregory.
So, Mayor and Commissioners, we are not looking for action on this. It is merely just for information. But after the bid openings for the Downtown Connector and Turner Street Avenue, when we first originally looked at that grant ask, it was an engineer's estimate that we were working off of. They did come in just slightly higher than the engineer's estimate. So fortunately for us, TIB has a process that, an administrative process that can grant up to a certain percentage of the total project for an increase in funding. That if you don't go over, it doesn't need to go to their board. And we applied for that and received that in the last week or so. And it did increase the funding for the Downtown Connector project by just less than $160,000. And for the Turner Street project, just over $40,000. So just wanted to bring back a little bit of good news and continued to bring grant funding to those projects.
Absolutely, and you needed nothing from us other than to say thank you.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Come back next week, please, with exactly that same report.
Okay.
All right, so it appears that we don't need to take any action on that at the moment. So we're talking about item number 4, Downtown Connector Material Testing Services, and that is again Mr. Craig Gregory.
So we have had quite a few of these lately, materials testing and compaction testing proposals. It is something that we cannot do in-house, so we need a consultant to do that. This is for the Downtown Connector project, and we selected, I lost it. Construction Testing Laboratories for the testing. It is the same contractor that is doing the Basin 3 project. So we are asking to enter into a contract with them for materials testing for the Downtown Connector project.
Questions or comments for Craig?
Not on this item.
I imagine that they work, who do they work for? They have a state agency that then comes and inspects their testing, or they just send the results over to Olympia? when they do the soil testing? Do you have a state agency that comes and inspects that, or does the company that we're making this agreement with send results over to them?
No, they actually do the physical testing themselves in a laboratory and then send us results.
Okay, so they do they have to do the groundwork first, then they do it
Correct.
in a laboratory, then they send you the results.
That is correct.
Doesn't that have to be sent on to the state or something? or-
No.
It's an in-house thing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions for Craig Gregory? Hearing none, this commission concurs to place this on the action agenda item for May 15th, 2018. All right, number 5 is a street light purchase information here, and so, Mr. Gregory.
So when we originally looked at this project, we had entered into an agreement for PUD 3 to provide the poles and pay for those and install them. After a further look at that, we actually came up with what I think will save the city some money in the long run. And we had the project pay for the actual poles, and we will save the per pole charge by the PUD. It is a pretty significant amount per pole that we are charged out there, and that does include the maintenance and replacement of those poles. So really, we're renting those essentially. And after looking at that and having enough funding available, we figured it would be a better purchase for us to make independently. So with 33 illumination poles on the project, we actually got, per PUD's request, a couple of backup poles that we will store in case one of them gets hit. So we actually purchased or went to bid for 35 poles, and we got 2 bids back. The low bid coming in at $175,525.01. And again, that will be paid out of the Downtown Connector project funding.
Questions or comments?
So that's coming out of that, what was that connector project was fully funded plus, what was it, 300,000 or something, or?
It is right at the
It's coming
funding
out
level.
here, the leftover anyway.
That's correct.
So we pay for the poles and then PUD puts them, installs them and does.
Correct.
all
And
the
then all we will have moving forward is a consumption charge for when the luminaires are actually on.
work. Okay.
All right.
All right.
Okay, it appears we concur with this item on the May 15th, 2018 agenda, action agenda. All right, talking about action, we are now at that point where we are entering into the action agenda. Every one of these items can have any public comment about the specific item, and the first item on that action agenda is going to be presented to us by our senior planner, Jason Does, and that is going to be about modernization. There you go.
Absolutely. Thank you,
All right.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. As I think you're all aware, the Shelton School District last year passed a bond, or rather the voters did, that allowed for several improvements to the local schools. I've been before you for the new Mountain View School. They've submitted permits for upgrades to several of the other schools. What I'm here for tonight is to get hopefully final approval on a special use permit that would allow for the expansion and modernization of Shelton High School. In March of this year, the hearings examiner held a public hearing for a special use permit to allow for the school district to construct a 3-story, almost 48,000 square foot classroom and administrative office addition to Shelton High School. That building would be placed in what is now the quad, if you're familiar with the campus, right in front of the admin building, next to the music building, and the sub, kind of right in front of the parking lot. It'd be kind of the new welcome to the site. It would also include a nearly 7,000 square foot auxiliary gym backed by the existing tennis courts. And other portions of the project, of course, include HVAC upgrades, some window upgrades, paint, roof, that sort of thing to modernize the other buildings. The school district worked with city staff and their design team, worked with city staff and the Port of Shelton because the site itself lies within zones 3 and 6 of the airport overlay zone that helps protect incompatible land uses from encroaching on Sanderson Field. As part of the design for this, what the project also includes is essentially the vacation of 2 existing classroom buildings that are located closest to the airport, the removal of 3 portables, and then, of course, the additions I described. So Port of Shelton was fine with this. City staff found it's in keeping with the airport overlay regulations. Part of the review we did as part of the special use permit is looked at any compatibility issues, any safety issues, and we're able to demonstrate to the hearings examiner that this is a superior result to the existing situation, even though we're adding to the school. That said, we are recommending approval, and the way the commission approves a special use permit, the hearings examiner makes a recommendation. He's recommending approval to the commission, and if you choose, what we're asking is that you introduce and pass Resolution 1124-0418, which would give the final approval to the project, and we can move forward.
Fantastic. Because this is the action agenda, we do allow for any public comment about specific issues. So has anybody signed in for this specific one?
No.
Okay. Question I had, so was a special use permit kind of kicked into gear because of the 3-story? Is that, or if it was single story, would that have needed this?
Schools, hospitals, things of that nature are considered what are called special function land uses as it relates to airport operations. So any special function land use requires a special use permit. And you do bring up an important point. It's not part of the permit before the commission. Basically, you're just looking at the meat of the special use permit part and either agreeing or disagreeing with the hearings examiner. But the permit, the hearings examiner did approve a variance to the height limitations in the zone and allowed for, I want to say, a maximum height of 48 feet. Don't quote me on that, but it did include about a 8 or 10 foot height increase for this building because the constrained space they have on the site. In order to fit the amount of classrooms they want, comply with regulations for natural light and access, they felt the need to do a 3-story building.
Any other questions or comments concerning this subject?
Not for me.
Hearing none, you've been before us 3 or 4 times on this issue, and I'm sure the school is ready to get going on the project. So I would like to say that I would entertain a motion at this time to approve. Yes, absolutely. First, can we have a reading of the resolution?
Yes. Resolution number 1124-0418, a resolution of the City of Shelton Commission concurring with the hearing examiner's recommendation regarding special use permit 01-18, an application by the Shelton School District to expand and modernize Shelton High School within Zone 6 of the airport overlay zone.
Now, could I have a motion?
I'll move to approve resolution 1124-0418 as read and recommended by the hearing examiner.
I second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Okay. Item number 2, city surplus vehicles. And again, this is our Public Works Director, Craig Gregory.
Thanks again, Mayor and Commissioners. Again, we have a surplus of city equipment and vehicles before you. The difference with these particular pieces of equipment are that they are general fund, so they do not require a public meeting or a resolution to surplus, just a vote of the commission to do so. So we are asking to surplus the list of vehicles that you have in front of you from the general fund.
Okay. Is anybody from the public signed up for this?
No.
Okay. So I had a question, since I'm kind of looking for a little used truck. I don't know, can the mayor buy, if you have an auction that you sell us at, or are these all going south someplace, or, I mean, how would it, if I wanted to buy one of these trucks?
So they are sealed bid. We have cautioned our city employees
Not to do this.
that it might not be a good look for them to bid on vehicles.
Okay.
But that is completely up to you, Mr. Mayor.
No, I'll shy away from that one, no doubt about it. I'll go on a Craigslist or something. But I did see that, and I'm looking for one of those.
Okay.
Why, well, the one that doesn't run?
Well, no, I probably have to fix it first, so, okay, well, I thought.
I think Jason Dose is looking at the list now too, so I have a competitor.
All items go out to city
You
employees.
know,
Two guys bidding on the same truck.
probably best not do that. Well, I'm fine with this moving forward, and we asked if there's no one from the public to comment on this, and so, any other questions or comments? Okay, so, at this point, we don't have to read anything, I will entertain a motion to dispose.
I move to declare the property listed on Exhibit A to be deemed surplus and authorize the legal and proper disposal of such property.
I'll second that.
There's a motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Passes. All right, item number 3 is some design construction standards for 2018. Again, Craig Gregory is going to talk to us about that.
So Mayor and Commissioners, we wanted to update the construction standards to reflect some needed changes. We did list those. We did not give you the entire standards book. It is a fairly lengthy document that I think we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that you can find on the City of Shelton website. So we gave you just the items that were up for change and also a dollar amount that could be incurred because of those changes. Most of these, if you will see, are really things that will end up costing the City of Shelton just a little bit more money with projects that we do, or a larger development. Doesn't really affect the average homeowner that might be looking to build within the city limits. It's really just affecting larger projects, but we tried to keep those at a minimum, and we do have the cost associated with those, and I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have on the changes.
Well, first, is anybody in the public chose to speak on this?
No.
Yes, we have a gentleman in the back who wants to talk.
Mike Olson.
Mike Olson, I'm not sure if this fits into it, I may be jumping in the wrong spot here. I haven't looked the whole list over, but I became aware this week that homeowners or builders are now going to be bearing the whole cost of a water hookup. Previously, the city would do the actual physical tap of the main line in the street, and the builder or homeowner was responsible for reimbursing the city. Now I've learned that that's no longer the case, that the city will no longer be doing the physical hookup. And I asked a couple questions about, does anybody get to do this? Where's the liability end? And nobody really had the answer to that yet. I think I don't know if it was in this design standard update or not. But my other comment on it is as this fee structure thing has gone back and forth over the last couple of years, your intent was to reduce the cost of building in a city. When you reduce the fees or the physical hookup, the city paid for those and the city lost money. So now you've gone to the other side to where the builder is now responsible for it, which they should be. But now that cost is going to be more than what the city would be paying, because I've talked to a couple of contractors who do this kind of work, and they said that, if they're going to take the liability of tapping into a 6 or 8 inch main, that the cost is going to be more than the city was charging. So I don't know where this fits into your whole thing, but I just wanted to bring that up, that I think it's something that needs to be looked into, that do you want private contractors tapping into city equipment like that? I think it could open up some liability that may not be addressed yet. Thanks.
Thank you for your comment. Any other questions or comments?
No.
Okay. Then I would entertain a motion to accept this proposed design and construction standards revisions.
You know, there's one thing I'd like to clear up first. Do you have any comment on that, Craig?
The commission did vote on
It
that
seems to me
change
I remember
quite
that.
some months ago.
Quite a while
And
ago.
we had quite a few discussions about that.
Right.
So it was brought up in quite a few public meetings, and that change was discussed. And we have thought about those issues. It is witnessed by a city employee that is trained in that, in the tapping of water mains. But yes, it really was just, it came down to a cost savings to the department where we just couldn't incur that cost to go out and do that in the future. So we decided to have a contractor, a licensed contractor, so it's not just like a homeowner or any individual can go and do that tap. It has to be a licensed contractor to do that tap of the main, and it is witnessed by a city employee that is trained in that field. So again, I reiterate, we did have quite a few discussions on that. It's been quite a few months, quite a while ago, that we had those discussions and made that change to the water standards.
So the contractor is doing this, a city employee is standing there, giving his, looking it over as it's being done, right?
Inspecting the tap, that is
Okay.
correct.
While it's being done?
Correct.
Okay.
And you say contractor, are you saying like plumbers?
Has to be somebody that's licensed in water main taps.
Okay, all right. Good.
Okay.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion to accept.
I move to accept the proposed revisions to the City of Shelton design and construction standards.
I second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Next is an item that we have, item number 4, and we have some information about this from Craig Gregory.
My favorite topic these days.
Yeah.
Anytime you mention a traffic signal, we get all kinds of comments. But we have revised what we had asked you a couple of weeks ago to support the removal of that light. And what we are really looking for now is to concur that we take a look at the traffic signal at Coda Street and First, and really take a look at whether it is warranted and have an overall cast a wider net over this to see if that light actually needs to stay or if it can be removed, and then bring it back to the commission after we have studied that with our partners at WashDOT and come up with a conclusion to bring back to the commission.
So we're not voting on this tonight?
No.
Well, we are asking
Thank
you
you
still
very
to
much.
take a look at the letter that will be going to WashDOT, but basically what we had before was we wanted the support of the commission, that they agreed that we would remove the light, and at this point, what we're actually just looking for is that you concur that we take a look and study that traffic signal to see if it actually needs to be there or if it could be removed, and then we could have a further discussion once we take a look at that.
And in my staff briefing yesterday, we looked at the wording and we saw that at this point, we just want to know if this is something that is acceptable. We're just studying it to see if it's, we're not saying we're doing it or it's all done, but we have the letters written in a way to just ask if that is acceptable. Then we can revisit on whether or not we think it's what we want to do.
We really just want to understand why it's there. I've had quite a few phone calls this week.
1810, they put that light in and it's going to be there.
Yeah,
Day
I have
done.
not looked back into the history of that, but we have quite a few theories on why it's there. But really just trying to understand why it is there, and with quite a few phone calls this week, and the complaints that came with that. We don't hear from everybody that thinks it's a great idea. We hear from folks that don't think it's a good idea. But my question to them was, think back over the last year or so out there driving, and when have you ever hit 2 signals in 2 consecutive blocks? And what I got was silence on the other end of the phone to come back and say, yeah, not really ever. So we really just want to look at that. And with the warrants, we have already started traffic counts. Those are quite a few of the warrants that you have to look at. Our AM, PM peak hours and how much traffic's actually going through that intersection. Pedestrians, there's some crash data that I'll have to get from Chief Moody to how many accidents we've had in that area. So there are some things to certainly take a look at. And that was our goal in the long run, was to look at this. We weren't just going to go and take it out. As we did on 4th and Railroad, we had quite an extensive study by our traffic engineer, and that was really the direction that we were going with this signal also, is to take a wider look at it and see if it's actually needed.
There may be someone from the public who wants to talk about this tonight. This is the opportunity, so if anybody does, has anybody signed up to talk about this issue? All right, well.
I have all kinds of questions for Craig, but I'm gonna say.
My goodness, are those all those yellow notes stuck all over your thing? Whoa. Okay, this is gonna be an all-nighter, folks. Okay, go ahead.
But I'm gonna shorten it up real quick, and let's just wait for your assessment and go from there. That's what we're looking for.
And we will certainly, as soon as we get that back, we will certainly bring it back to the commission. I can't tell you how quickly we are going to move through that. We are working with a partner on this, so hopefully in the next month or so we can bring it back, but maybe a little longer than that. But as soon as we do get it back, we will put it back on the agenda and open it up for discussion.
So, okay.
Does it say in here, WASDOT's doing the assessment, correct?
We have been in talks with them. We're not quite sure what direction they want to go in at this point. We do have a traffic engineer on staff at this point that we can lean on if that's the direction they would like to go, or if they would like to use their staff to do this. It is something that we're asking for. So we have been in contact with them and haven't gotten clear direction at this point, but I'm sure within the next couple of days, we will certainly have that and be able to move forward.
Okay.
Thank you for waiting on that.
Yes, you're welcome.
And this is the opportunity to ask those questions, Mr. Dorsey, too. I mean, we want to get it all out here and talk about it, so we know what to do. You okay at this point?
I'm okay
All
at
right,
this point.
so I would entertain a motion then, just to investigate this possible light issue.
Do we have to make a motion on
We
that?
still are asking, Mayor, that you sign this letter to WashDOT that says that we
Requesting,
would like to
yes.
take a look at this signal.
So, yeah, and we talked about that. We're not saying we're doing it. We just want to look into it.
Correct.
So we don't need a motion at this time. We just concur to move forward, or you want to?
We are asking for a motion
Okay.
to authorize you to sign that letter of support to take
All
a
right.
look at that signal.
Okay.
You want to make, you want to
It is a
make,
little bit, okay, I'll read this. I move to allow the city to partner with WASDOT on the removal of the traffic signal. That's the part that I'm not sure about. At First and Coda by authorizing the mayor to sign the letter of support.
Okay, but the letter, so do
The
you
letter
want,
of support
We will
defines.
need to revamp that just a little bit to
We
take
will.
that
You might want to reword
removal
that.
out. Correct.
Okay,
I apologize for that.
that's okay.
but the letter, we wrote the letter,
Yes, we would like to assess
So,
yes.
the
right,
possibility of removal
Okay.
for that traffic signal.
right,
So we would just like to amend the motion
yeah, okay.
that you just made.
Yeah, amend the motion.
So who amends the motion?
That
That's
seven-person
you?
council, and they get that seven-person
All right.
council in here, they know how to amend those motions. They'll whip this
Just
thing
don't
right up.
Put the word possible right here. For me, there.
do we need to amend it tonight?
Yes.
Yes.
We can amend the motion to say instead of removal, you will request an assessment of the,
Bingo, you just did it, Vicki.
okay.
But some of you guys,
You can have a second.
Yeah, just read.
Yeah, just second her. She said we can just second it.
All right, we'll second that. Okay, so we have motion and second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. There you go. Thank you very much.
I
Yeah, a lot of-
apologize for the confusion.
No, I just want to make sure that we don't do it right away. Let's just talk about it and get some studies. Okay, item number 5, moving right along, I have now a latecomers agreement, and it's going to be presented to us again by Craig Gregory.
So we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, the need to amend the Washington State Latecomers Agreement and the requirements that we had to move forward with that. Originally, we had looked at giving some water credits to make up around just over $19,000, $19,200 to be exact. We then looked at their actual billing for Washington State Patrol. And originally, Washington State Patrol had told us it was around $600 a month for consumption that they had anticipated. They are actually around $300, so it would take us a fairly lengthy time frame to give them the entire credit. And after talking to our interim finance director, Terry Snitzer, we came to an agreement that would be more cost-effective to not spend staff hours billing or giving credit on a monthly basis, but to make a one-time payment of $19,200 to Washington State Patrol to satisfy that portion of the latecomers agreement.
I agree with that. I mean, it would take 5 years, according to this, my math.
That's correct.
If there's anybody from the public, this opportunity, anybody signing in for this issue?
No.
Okay. Okay, any more questions or comments?
Yep.
All right.
In our discussion a few weeks ago and today, we discussed that WSP we needed them to disconnect from their well, correct?
That is correct.
And I would like you to explain to the audience and us why.
So when we first looked at this latecomers agreement almost 2 years ago, at the time, we had a Department of Health loan for the Upper Mountain View Pressure Zone that totaled $4.5 million. 2.25 million of that was eligible for loan forgiveness. If we got one of a couple of exempt wells disconnected and hooked up to city services, that would have been the Upper Mountain View Pressure Zone. Public Works didn't necessarily have a plan at that point who they were going to get disconnected. So we were bumping up against that time requirement to get a disconnection, and we approached several, including Mason County Public Works, and Washington State Patrol finally struck an agreement with Washington State Patrol to get them hooked up and disconnected. They needed a little bit of financial help to get that done. So in our assessment, the $2.25 million was well worth spending a few thousand to get that loan forgiveness. So that is the reason that we entered into this ultimately.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion at this time.
I move to allow the mayor to sign amendment number 1 of the latecomers agreement and authorize the interim finance director to make a one-time payment of $19,200 payable to the Washington State Patrol.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. This is, again, the Craig Gregory Show. He has spoken, I think, about everything we got tonight, but that's all
Sit
right.
up here in your place.
I'm keeping it quick, though.
He should sit up here.
No, I mean, at least, he's so good at this that he keeps it nice and precise and everything, so. Okay, next is you, and that's about the deobligation of Basin 3 loan, so.
So we are looking to deobligate the loan portion of the funding source that we have from Department of Ecology. At this point, it looks like we have enough funding through the grants and direct appropriations to fund the construction portion of this project without the need to utilize the loan portion, which also, if we utilize any portion of that loan at any point through this project, it would kick in the federal standards for projects, which we feel would be very expensive to use a small portion of this loan. So at this point, we have plenty of contingency built into this project to fund it. At this point, it may take some partners' money through the satellite wastewater treatment plant, or could come out of the in-fund balance of the sewer department itself. But at this point, we are asking to deobligate that loan portion of the funding.
Has anybody signed up for public comment on this issue? No? Thank you. Questions or comments?
So you want to back up just a second, because I didn't hear you quite right, I don't think. So what happens if we were to use any part of this loan? It would, I mean...
It would kick in the federal standards,
federal
which
money.
are much different than the state standards. You run into things like
Right.
Buy America,
That's right,
which means
that's right.
all of your steel needs to be purchased from an American company. We do have some steel in our manholes, which would make it so that we would have to go to a vendor that provided American steel. There's also requirements for actual tracking of the loan and the overall process that we go through as far as tracking the entire project. So those requirements would be very, very staff intensive, and don't feel that for something like this, it would be appropriate to do.
Right.
And this was a Department of Ecology loan, right?
That's correct.
So that probably looks kind of good on our record if we send some of that back.
I certainly think it shows how hard the city of Shelton worked
Yeah.
to get this project fully funded for the construction portion,
Right.
to give that money back and deobligate it to somebody that may be in need of that funding to get a project done also. But yes, I certainly think that it shows the tenacity that we had to get this project fully funded.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions or comments? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move to approve the deobligation of the SRF loan and authorize the mayor to sign the deobligation form once it is submitted to the city.
I second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further comments? Hearing none, let's see, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? The motion passes. All right, moving right along to item number 7, Turner Street. And again, this is Craig.
Just a few more, Mayor.
That's right. You know what, we got 18 items, we used to have 6, but then we moved it all to, 2 nights a month and everything, so. I
So
got
we
it.
are looking to enter into a contract for the construction of the Turner Street, or Turner Avenue, full depth reclamation project. We did go to bid and got several bids for the project, and ultimately would like to enter into a contract with Northern Asphalt for the construction of this project.
Is anybody from the public signed up to talk about this issue?
No.
Okay, so questions or comments for Craig?
No. I believe this project was also either fully funded or close, right?
The construction of the original scope of the project has a decent amount of funding, grant funding, especially after the increase of the 40,000.
Yeah.
We got up to $311,000. We did add just a few things on to the project. There were a couple of connecting roads that were in the residential paving that was scheduled for this year that we added to the project. Just simply looking at it, we put them in as additives to the contract to see what the bids would actually come back at. Those bids looked like they were much better than what we would get if we went out for a larger bid for the full 20 blocks that we had scheduled this year. So we did add those to this project, and we also added the section between Angleside Road and 7th Street, which also drove the price up just a touch. But we do have adequate funding at this point through transportation dollars to fund all of these pieces, and it is budgeted at the full amount.
All right, any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I would approve, or I'd like a motion to approve this contract.
I move to approve the contract for the construction of the Turner Avenue Full Depth Reclamation Project. Love that title. Great. Perfect title. By authorizing the mayor to sign the project award form and the contract with Northern Asphalt LLC.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve. All those in favor, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Approved. All right, item number 16, I think.
No.
Well,
16.
well, it's tab
8.
16. I bounce between the page number and the, you know, so. Okay, so this is Craig again. He's going to talk to us about the Downtown Connector Project contract.
So we would like to enter into a contract with Launch Construction for the construction of the Downtown Connector Project. Again, after opening bids, they were the low bidder, and this project, unlike Turner, looks like it is 100% funded after the partners' money, the TIB grant that we received, and also the increase from TIB, and the supplemental transportation budget grant that was received for $1 million just here recently. The construction portion of this project looks like it will be 100% funded.
Thank you. Is there anybody from the public that wanted to speak about this subject? No. Any questions or comments concerning this? I was there in the room when I think the contract bid came in over here, and it was exciting to see that we were on budget and everything worked out really well for that. So long time on that one. Mm-hmm. All right, well, it appears that we are ready to have a motion on this.
I move to approve the contract for the construction of the Downtown Connector Project by authorizing the mayor to sign the project award form and the contract with Launch Construction Trucking Incorporated.
And I will second that.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Very good.
And I say thank you.
Thank you very much.
And your crew.
Okay, next, funding level designs for grant applications, and this is item number 9. And again, Craig is going to talk to us about this.
So about this time a year ago, we came to the commission and asked you to take a leap of faith with the Public Works Department and take a look at some large projects that we would go after grant funding for. Ultimately, that ended up being the Downtown Connector project that we did design level funding for, or funding level design for, and ultimately ended up fully designing that before we actually got funding, looking further into the future if we didn't get funded in 2017. We are now asking to do the same for what we think are some much needed projects, transportation projects for the city of Shelton that are needed. And we have identified 3 of those that we would like to move forward with to take a look at that design to go to funding and ultimately fully design these projects for the 2019 construction season.
Does anybody from the public wanted to speak at this, on this? No? Okay, so questions or comments concerning this from our commission?
Well, I had one today, and I talked to Craig about it, and he enlightened me that I was kind of concerned on how we could do this without affecting our budget. And without even hesitation, he explained to me that these funds can only be used for these types of projects. It doesn't affect the general fund or the budget. Is that correct?
These are restricted funds,
You can add-
transportation restricted funds that are embedded within the general fund, but they can only be used for transportation projects, design and construction. And ultimately, what we have done over the last year is when we were looking at the 2018 budget, we had taken out of those restricted transportation funds about $1.2 million to fund all of the projects that we had slated to go this year. Ultimately, with all of the hard work that everybody has done, we ultimately ended up getting about that much funding in addition to what we thought we had. So all of those funds that we thought we were going to use up on these projects are still available to us.
Hooray!
So, yeah, we have a pretty healthy transportation fund right now that, again, we touched on it 2 weeks ago. We did have an agreement or had the commission vote. It's been quite some time ago. It's been almost 2 years ago, I believe, on setting where those transportation dollars would ultimately end up going. And that was major projects, residential paving, and also non-motorized mobility. And again, we are certainly committed to getting out there and getting those residential streets paved. But ultimately, I think it was 65%, if my memory is correct, that the commission wanted to designate to larger construction projects and matching funds for those. So ultimately, that's what we are looking for, whether that comes from TIB again, or some sort of federal funding, or even the state supplemental transportation budget. Once again, that is something that we would like to go after. But to do that, you are required to at least come up with a preliminary design and an engineer's estimate of what that project will cost. So it's not that we can just go out and look for that funding without doing at least this design portion
And if you
of the
are
project.
awarded, excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you are awarded some monies, chances are those costs will be reimbursed.
They have been for all of the projects that we have funded at this point.
Yeah.
They were eligible for reimbursement. I think TIB's general rule of thumb is a year so if you did preliminary design in 2018 and didn't get funded until the 2019 cycle, they would still be eligible, but that's generally their rule of thumb. I don't know what that is for federal funds or the supplemental budget, the state budget, but you are correct.
Now that roundabout, are you done, Kevin? The roundabout at Neeland and Shelton Springs Road, is that gonna be a partnership with the school?
It certainly could be. We are in talks with them. They do have some traffic impact fees from the high school project, totaling about $200,000 that we have talked to them about. That will certainly affect that intersection and ultimately any other project that's on Spring Road that could generate some traffic through that intersection. I certainly think that looking at some other alternative would be the way to go there. We certainly are not set on what we had talked about, what would be a roundabout there. We will look at every option to increase flow through that intersection and certainly are not set on that particular thought at this point. We will certainly take a look at it, work with WashDOT and also our consultants to come up with the best possible option to move traffic through that intersection.
So then the street and sidewalk improvements on 7th from Alder to Railroad and on Railroad from 7th to city limits. There's not enough room along Railroad further out to do sidewalks, is there?
There is.
There is.
Most likely it would be for right now, probably one side, but ultimately what we would like to look at, and we will be bringing a project forward in the next couple of weeks for a structure that's out between 10th and 11th that will increase our non-motorized mobility with some sidewalks and some frontage improvements, and have you take a look at that. But ultimately, what we would like to do is extend sidewalks on both sides of the road out to 12th Street, and then look at a sidewalk on the south side of the road that would connect up with Pacific Avenue at the city limits, and have a sidewalk on that south side of Railroad out to the city limits.
Okay.
I also had 2 separate staff briefings to talk about the funding of these, and, you know, we've just come out of some major successes with infrastructure projects, just talking to Craig, about, okay, how does this funding work? How are we? I don't want to get into trouble. We're doing really good, everything. And he basically convinced me, and he has been a real success story for the city of Shelton on how he runs this public works department. And so I'm all in favor of going forward with this.
Mm-hmm.
So are there any other questions or comments at this time? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move to authorize the expenditure of city transportation funds to design the proposed projects in anticipation of the 2019 construction season.
Second. There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. And semi-last but not least, it looks like we're going to have a speech from our police chief. Just let him do it.
Tap me
He's
out.
good. Yeah, okay.
He's on a roll at my name.
Yeah.
I thought we were tag teaming there.
Before I give you what I'm about to, I just want to give a thank you to the commission and the staff. Tonight, first night of our Reserve Police Officer Academy that we're hosting here in town, so that him come and go through the Civic Center for about the next 6 months as we put on the Reserve Academy. As you'll know, the last one we did in 2015, we hired 6 of the 7 reserves over a period of time, and we were able to partner with Thurston County, who Sheriff Snaza and I kicked it off tonight, and so we're hoping to get the same success rate out of it. What I'm here to talk about most of all is the interlocal agreement between us and the school district. We've talked about this for the last month plus. This is the contract that simply extends us from about a month ago until June, when school is out. It doesn't add any existing officers or staff to the police department. It's simply officers on their days off on overtime, working at the schools from now until the end of school year. And we've talked about it pretty extensively, but if you have any further questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Only question, let's see here, has anybody from the public signed up to ask this question, talk about this?
No.
Okay. Got my little sheet here I gotta follow. My question just is basically that, the general fund is where any money would come from to any excess for something like this, and I know that the general fund isn't like our infrastructure project fund and stuff, and it can be kind of tight. Are you thinking that the city is going to have to pay more money than what we kind of had budgeted, or, a little bit, or is this the school?
For this particular contract, the school is paying the officers at a fully burdened rate, which basically is their salary and benefits.
Okay.
Our expense in this until June is gas and any equipment needed.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for?
So
Yes.
for the following year, the next year, 2019, there's
You
going to
mean the
be
calendar year? I'm sorry, Mr. Dorsey, calendar year, or are you talking school year? Because that's
School
still
year.
18.
school year next year.
In September?
Yeah, they're going to meet, this district is going to meet in where is it here? June? No. Where is it here? Anyway, they're going to have a meeting, and then we're going to have a meeting in June, I think it was.
I see June here.
June, to see what the costs are for the next year, correct? Is that what it was? I think so.
I'm getting a cheat sheet, hold on.
So
Yes.
we'll be finding out what, the school district's gonna go 80%, we're gonna go about 20%.
Well,
We'll be finding out what that is.
actually, it's a little more involved than 80/20.
Okay.
What's gone before the school board, and now they're in their budget talks, forming their budget, because they're fiscal year versus calendar year, which we are. What's going before them is to pay salary and benefits for 2 full-time officers for us to hire, bring on 2 full-time officers, and those will be assigned to the schools. And the district for a 2-year period would pay full salary and benefits.
Oh, yeah, 2-year period, that's right.
Our cost would again be training, equipment, fuel, that type of thing. So I hesitate to say that it would be 20%. I hate to put a number on it.
Right.
Because it would vary. But
Okay.
in general, it's going to be a pretty small number right now.
Yeah.
If they
There
pay.
will be a cost, but it's,
Yeah, I mean, we've worked with finance to go over some numbers in it. There's any estimate somewhere around $1,000 a month maybe for one officer. So we'd be getting essentially 2 more police officers added to the police department or somewhere in that neighborhood. But again, those are preliminary numbers. I'd hate to put an exact number on
Okay.
it now.
thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, I'm ready for a motion to approve.
I move to approve the SRO agreement number 1 by authorizing each member of the commission to sign the agreement.
I second that.
There is a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Thank you very much. Whew, here we are, doing real well. Any administration report tonight?
Mayor, the only thing I wanted to comment on is the groundbreaking for the Downtown Connector project is on the 14th, and it is at 3 p.m.
3 p.m. That's what I thought. Somebody said 9 o'clock.
Just wanted to make sure you got to the right place at the right time.
And that will be where?
It is at 5th and Alder, so right next to the county buildings, just to the west of the courthouse.
Okie dokie.
So if people come at 9 a.m., they're gonna be a little early.
You could serve them coffee while they wait.
And that is all of the reports that I have for this evening.
Thank you very much. And I have a little statement I just wrote down here, that for the first time in a long time, the next city meeting that we'll have on the 15th, we will be a 7-person council. So we're looking forward to that evening, and at
There'll be a
this,
party, too.
it'll be a party and stuff too, and pictures and popcorn and everything. But, so our next council meeting will be Tuesday, May 15th at 7 p.m. in the evening. This meeting here is adjourned. Thank you.